I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker this morning for breakfast. Mike Howard is Chairman and CEO of Howard Midstream Energy Partners with over 26 years of midstream energy experience. He co-founded the company in June 2011, and what started as 8 employees and a small pipeline in South Texas has now grown to over $3 billion in assets and almost 350 employees in 4 states and in Mexico. Mike was formerly president of Midstream for the largest division of a Fortune 100 energy company and held various management positions in publicly traded energy companies throughout his career. Mike holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, also Caleb's alumni. He lives in San Antonio, Texas with his wife and 3 children, and Mike serves on the board of directors of HEP and Jonah Insurance, LLC. He also serves on the board of trustees of the Texas A&M University Kingsville Foundation, the Texas Pipeline Association, the United Way of Bexar County, the Whitty Museum, and active in many civic organizations. All in all, a very good guy and has a great presentation on the good work of this industry. Mike, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Jason, for having me come here to talk today. I love this conference's theme, strong history, bright future. That's exactly what I like to talk about. Of course, today I'll be talking to the choir, but typically we try to talk to people that are not in our industry to explain how good our industry does. And so I'll echo what Jason said. Thank you for what you do for a living. You are the industry that powers every other industry. As our products are more expensive, so as everything else that we do in our lives become more expensive. It's especially good talking to you today with NYMEX over $5 for natural gas, with oil hanging around $70, much different than even 4 or 5 months ago. And I'll give you a statistic. As you were going through the pandemic last year, kind of the peak of it, you were hearing about peak oil. You were hearing about demand for oil is going to be diminishing from here on out. This month, the U.S. has the highest demand for crude oil in its history. 22.8 million barrels a day is being consumed in the U.S. That's pre-2019 demand for gasoline, diesel. The only thing that's not meeting demand is jet fuel, and it's only 4% off the highs of 2019. So the rhetoric about us having peak oil, it's not true yet. We're breaking records right this second. And what I wanted to kind of share with you today, Howard Energy, we mentioned a while ago, is started in 2011. So we started with 8 employees, and now we have 350 employees in 4 states, and we're known for building a 200-mile pipeline in Mexico. I had a friend tell me one time that it might have been easier to colonize Mars than it was to get that pipeline built in Mexico. We're one of the first U.S. companies to actually build a pipeline that actually crosses the border that takes the natural gas out of Webb County, the largest natural gas producing county in the state of Texas, to the largest natural gas producing consuming region in Latin America, which is Monterey. Our company did that. Our company gathers and processes natural gas. We gather and process oil. We have deep water port facilities where we export gasoline and diesel. We have a hydrogen plant in Corpus Christi, Texas, where we recycle hydrogen to refineries. So we have a lot of different business lines in a lot of different regions. And so one of the things that leads us to do, since we're privately held, meaning we have partners that are Canadian, Asian, European. We raise a lot of capital, as Jason mentioned, over our 10-year history. To be an infrastructure company, you have to have access to a lot of capital. So a lot of the things that we think about are much different because it's coming from a Canadian influence or an Asian influence that may be different than raising money from domestic sources that understand oil and gas better. Our sources of capital come from literally all over the world. So we're under different pressures to promote fossil fuels versus people that just kind of get it. And so we started our company as a meaningful endeavor, and our purpose is to deliver positive energy. But as you listen to all this anti-fossil fuel rhetoric, as you try to combat people leaving our industry, whether it be capital leaving our industry or employees leaving our industry for tech or some other industry because of perception that we're a bad industry. As we're putting this map together, we're trying to figure out, should we be diversifying our assets? Should we be getting into renewables? Should we be doing things? I'm a capitalist. If there's a way to make money at it, I'd like to participate in some way. I want to put capital to work to make a return on capital. I'm very pro-capitalism. And if renewables, I felt like, were a way that we could do that, I'm in. So we started digging in to try to find the truth about what our industry truly does. And it started unlocking all these resources of information. And a lot of that information you're going to hear today with the CO2 Coalition here, Heartland Institute here, Chris Wright's talking today. A lot of people that I follow and use to come up with my thinking as I'm talking to investors and raising capital. This is a lot of the source data that I'm going to give to you, and I'm going to give you some aha moments that I went through. I'm going to give you 3 aha moments that kind of pulled this information together. And again, I'm trying to learn to talk to people other than just energy industry participants. I'm working to influence non-energy people that have the capacity to be intellectually honest and listen to what benefits our industry brings instead of just listening to the negative side effects of what our industry may consume. So I'm going to do 3 aha moments. It's going to start with a short quiz this morning to test your knowledge of the world. I'm going to give you a little history because we have a strong history and kind of tell you where we came from, and then show you a picture that kind of brought it all together for me. And then I'm going to give you 5 ways that I'm out, and it's not the only 5 ways to promote our industry, but maybe to influence and maybe have you follow some of these things that I'm doing to see if it would to help influence. So first is a little quiz. I know it's early in the morning. Hopefully everybody's had a couple cups of coffee, but it's to test your knowledge of the world. This is 40 years ago in 1980. About 40% of our planet lived in abject poverty. According to the UN, that's living on less than $2 a day. Now remember, to be poor in the U.S., you live at $35 a day. So this is much poorer than the U.S. Around the world, how many people live in poverty today? Is it 10% living in poverty, 30%, or 50%? Just keep the answers in your head. I'll give them to you. According to the World Health Organization, we're living in the best prosperous time in the history of civilization. Under 10% of the planet lives in abject poverty. That's still 700 plus million people. That's still too many, especially when you consider 46% of the planet lives on less than $5.50 a day. That's over 3 billion people that have limited access to electricity. But to come from where we are in 1980 to where we are today is unlike any time in human history. Question number 2, how many of the world's 1-year-old children have been vaccinated against some disease? This was a statistic pre-pandemic. The pandemic hasn't really improved that on a lot of the places we're thinking about outside the United States. But how many of the 1-year-old children today have been vaccinated? 80%, 50%, or 20%? Tell you, my answer was 20%. I couldn't imagine vaccines getting around the world that efficiently, especially some of the countries I've visited around the world in the last 20 years. But I tell you, according to the World Health Organization, 88% of children, of 1-year-old children, are vaccinated against some disease. And why is that? We have improved transportation fuels. We have improved refrigeration. We have ways to get into inaccessible areas that we never had before. It's a miracle. This is one you should know. I did not know. With all the geologists in the room, during the last 40 years, the amount of oil and natural gas remaining in known reserves, has it reduced to less than half? Has it remained more or less the same, or has it doubled? If you read the news, we're peaking oil, we're running out of resources. We've actually doubled our known reserves. Every time we improve technology, every time we find a new play, we find more reserves. It's a miracle, again, that we figure out how to extract the resources we do in the best way possible. There's 13 of these questions on gapminder.org. Dr. Hans Rosling wrote a book called Factfulness. He's a Swedish doctor, and he tests your theory of what you know about the world. He went around the world, tested thousands of experts from the UN and many organizations at universities, and a chimpanzee choosing randomly would always score higher than the experts on their knowledge of the world. He also learned that a chimpanzee could predict the future better than most experts in the world. And the purpose of that is it let me know that what I thought I knew about the world is so dated and out of date that we're accelerating human progress and doing better than we've ever done in human history. That's a big aha moment for me. The second aha moment for me came on when you think about human progress and what we've done. Back in 1800 is the left-hand side of this graph. It shows the form of energy we primarily used for all of human history was biomass. That's trees, crop tailings, dung, whatever we can use to burn, to cook our food, and to heat our homes. And then as we progress to the Industrial Revolution, to the right-hand side of the graph, that's 2020. The amount of energy we use today, even though there's 8 times more people on the planet, on the left-hand side, there's about 1 billion people on the planet. On the right-hand side of the graph, there's about 7.8 billion people on the planet. But that's much more than 8 times the energy. What we've learned is, as we do better in the world, we use a lot more energy. In order to fulfill the energy consumption that we have to use many different forms of energy. And what are that? What kind of forms of energy are that? That's coal, natural gas, oil are the primaries. The very minimal ones are nuclear, hydro, wind, and solar. But we've been going through an energy transition for over 300 years. We started with trees, we started adding charcoal to it, then you started adding oil to it, then natural gas. There's some nuclear involved. So we've been going through an energy transition for 300 years. And believe it or not, a lot of the people that I mentioned that are living in abject poverty are still on the left-hand side of the graph. I was in Cameroon hunting in the Congo in April of this year. Those people are on the left-hand side of the graph. And so I put John D. Rockefeller on here, and why I did that is in 1895, John D. Rockefeller, for the history people in the room, this is not new information, but he was the founder of Standard Oil Company, kind of the oil company of that day. If you think Jeff Bezos is rich today, this guy was probably 3 times richer than Jeff Bezos. They estimate 5% of the U.S. GDP was him. Very rich guy. There's not a person in this room, though, that would probably trade places with him in 1895. He had no AC, no refrigeration, no antibiotics, no TV, no car. If you wanted to go to Europe, it was 7 days to get there. We can get there in 7 hours. Infant mortality back then, they had to have 5 children, so they hoped that 3 made it. Average life expectancy in John D. Rockefeller's age was 45 years old. At 56, the way he was in 1895, he was already an old man. So it's amazing where we've come from the richest guy in the world to where we are today, that most middle-class Americans for sure would not trade places where that guy is. And finally, what I'm going to leave you with on an aha moment is a picture. And I probably got this from Chris Wright. Chris will be here later on today. But when I show this picture to non-energy people, it really hits home with them. This is a Caribbean island. On the right-hand side is the Dominican Republic. There's an imaginary red line in the middle of the picture that demarks Haiti on the left-hand side. If you've been to the Dominican Republic, it's a beautiful Caribbean destination. Haiti is deforested. Now, if you're an environmentalist, Haiti only has 1/3 the greenhouse gas emissions that Dominican Republic does. That does not mean they're successful. They have 9 times less the GDP of the Dominican Republic. Haiti is a terrible place. It's one of the poorest abject poverty countries on the planet. On the same island, same people, if you use fossil fuels, which the Dominican Republic does, to get their energy, their literacy rate, their life expectancy, infant mortality is so much better in modern times than the way they live in Haiti. That kind of put it all together for me. Around the world, when you see the countries that have energy, they're prosperous. There's no such thing as a high-income, low-energy country. There's no such thing as a high-income, low-energy person. It's just not available. And if you want to know where all this energy comes from around the world on countries that are prosperous and ones that we would want to live in, Our World in Data is a website that is run by Oxford University, great website, has a lot of information on it. This will show that 84% of the energy consumed, and this talk is about energy, not necessarily the products that we use out of oil and natural gas, just the energy consumed on the planet pretty much comes from oil, natural gas, and coal. 57% of that is oil and natural gas. So when you're going through an energy transition for 300 years, we haven't found a better way to fuel the lives that we live. That was a big statistic for me in thinking about how good our industry does and who has access to oil and gas and who doesn't have access to oil and gas and the quality of lives. If our goal in life is to serve others and to continue to raise people out of poverty, that tells me that we're doing a pretty darn good job. How much energy are we going to need in the future, though? We're not talking about what kind of energy, but how much energy, according to the U.S. Energy Information Agency. If you look on the left-hand side of the graph, that's 2010. The next bar is 2020. That's kind of where we're at today. We're at about 600 quadrillion BTUs a day of energy usage on the planet. And keep in mind, of the energy we consume, only 18% is electricity. The other 82% is for transportation, for heating and cooling, for industrial heat, for manufacturing products. All this talk about wind and solar, that's about 18% of our energy. Okay, set that aside. You still have to supply 82% of that energy. And oh, by the way, when you move to the right in 30 years, we're going to need 50% more energy than we use on the planet today. This is on the world. And what's interesting about that I found, I've been to many African countries. I like hunting, so I go there, pretty regularly. This assumes that Africa stays in abject poverty. This assumes that 1.4 billion people on that continent don't come out of poverty. This is just assuming that the non-OECD countries of Russia, China, India, places like that continue to grow their economies and continue to improve their people's lives. This is leaving Africa behind in the next 30 years. And I don't think that's the case. I think countries that continue to access oil and natural gas and coal will continue to do so. So this is just the EIA's estimate that we're going to need much more energy on the planet in the next 30 years. Just in the U.S. alone, how much natural gas are we going to need in the next 30 years? Again, going to the EIA, on the left-hand side is the natural gas produced in the U.S. and their estimate. This is starting at 2000, so it kind of shows you where we've come from back when we were at 20 TCF a year of production. Today, we're a little over 30 TCF a year. Under different scenarios, the EIA has us getting to over 50 TCF a year in the next 30 years. That means we have to offset decline of our existing wells and increase production to satisfy energy demands in the U.S. This is just U.S. in the next 30 years. On the right-hand side is consumption. Production on the left, consumption on the right. Again, giving me confidence that we're going to be in business for a long time. This is from the federal government's estimates. What reality is, I have no idea. If a chimpanzee can predict the future better than our experts can, I'm suspecting they're wrong. Probably in the wrong by a double. As we improve our connectivity to Mexico, as Howard Energy does, there's 128 million people down there that have very little access to electricity on a grand scale. If they just get the electricity access that we have, this graph is wrong. And so the final thing that tied it together for me, I'd say, after all this, and I'm going to give you 5 things that come together. Vaclav Smil, a lot of you may have read him. He's Bill Gates' favorite author. He's probably the leading energy thinker on the planet. He's not, I don't know if he's liberal or conservative, I don't care. He's a pretty smart physicist that talks about facts about human progress and how much energy we consume in our lives. And he thermodynamically links economic prosperity to energy. He says a decoupling of economic growth and energy consumption during early stages of modern economic development would defy the laws of thermodynamics. And you can't defy the laws of thermodynamics. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Everything we take from the planet, we are as a miracle of modern history, we convert that into the lives that we live today. And you'll hear from Greg Wrighthouse and others today. They're wonderful in saying some of the stuff about this. So when I'm talking to groups that aren't like this, that are non-energy people, it kind of ties it together for them too, because this is not a political discussion. This is a physics and energy discussion about thermodynamics. If you want to live a good life, you need energy. We supply energy. So it kind of eliminates the argument of the side effects, because there are side effects to our industry. We work to reduce the side effects, and we're going to get better at reducing the side effects. Just on flaring alone in the Permian, we've reduced flaring from 2019 to today by 73%, according to the Railroad Commission's latest data. Because as we focus on it, and as people are focused on it, what we do, and you set a bar for us in this room, we meet that bar. Whether it be low commodity prices, we're going to figure out a way to make money in low commodity prices. You set the bar on ESG, we're going to meet ESG, but we're going to keep supplying energy because people are going to keep using it. And so what are 5 things that I'm doing to help promote our industry? And it's interesting. I don't know that we do that great of a job as an industry. We depend on our associations to do all the work for us, and as leaders in the industry, I think we can do a better job in our circle of influence. I talk to a lot of CEOs that have children that go into university, into liberal universities, and they think what their dad does for a living or their mom does for a living is bad. It's like we're not doing a good job of educating our children. And so I work in my spare time in my job, not just to raise money and run a company, but also to promote our industry. And 5 things I'm doing. Number 1 is educating myself. These are 6 books that I've read in the last couple years that I found to be highly educational to me on my journey to learn more about really our industry and the impacts we have on the planet. I put these books on our website, howardenergypartners.com. So you can go to our website and look at the resources that I'm reading or my employees are reading, and we hand these out all the time. So it's not biased, it's not political, it's just facts of what they are. And there's a bunch more books I could put up here. Unfortunately, you're limited to space and time, but if you have somebody that is definitely a left-leaning person that will listen to a little bit of science, these I found that are very credible. Another thing is some of the websites. And of course, I'm in a room with Heartland and CO2 Coalition and others, and unfortunately I didn't put your websites up there, but you can go to them too. This is just a few of them that I found when I'm trying to give people knowledge about our industry and how good we're doing. Our World in Data, run by Oxford. Our World in Gapminder.org. He's a Swedish doctor that worked in Africa for many years and worked to fight ignorance about the world. His website is awesome if you want to figure out what country you're going to and how they're living. Great test for your children to take. BP's website, the Statistical Review of the World, great energy data. If you're giving speeches or whatever, it's good data. I like Michael Schellenberger's data about climate on his website, Environmental Progress. He lives in Berkeley, ran for governor of California, probably a pretty liberal guy. But his information, I think, is pretty solid. Number 2 that I'm doing is supporting life power. Jason Isaac is in the room today. I didn't know he was going to be here today. I was going to talk about his organization without him even being here. It's a Texas Public Policy Foundation project. Their goal is to raise America's energy IQ. I'm helping fund his energy initiative, which is bringing curriculum back into middle schools and high schools in Texas to put fossil fuels back into textbooks, as it's all been extracted from textbooks because it's bad. We want to get it back into our children's heads that what we do for a living is a really good thing. And wind and solar, while it is a form of energy, it has its limitations. It's unreliable. So their organization, lifepowered.org, you can go there, get involved with them, support Jason and his staff and everything that they're doing. Number 3, another Texas organization from the University of Texas, the Switch Energy Alliance, Dr. Scott Tinker. He works to educate people on ending energy poverty around the world. He goes to these places and puts together world-class documentaries. One is called Switch, one is called Switch On. They're in mini-series format or in long-form format. It's great to hand out to your friends, to your children, to see what electricity and energy brings to places like Ghana, Republic of Congo, Haiti. And he goes to those places And if you ever have him come speak to your groups, he's a great resource. And also for any industry professionals that have the capacity, I'm a judge and a mentor for the Switch Energy Alliance case competition. 200 universities on 6 continents have a competition. Last year was his first one. And energy professionals mentor universities. You're assigned a university. Mine happened to be in Kenya that they assigned me. And you're helping a group of 4 college students come up with ways to end energy poverty in different countries. They give you, whether it be Haiti, whether it be Congo, whether it be Somalia, wherever, they give you the resources of the country, and you help college students develop ideas around that. And again, helping to raise their level of education. I'll just tell you from my experience, college students, it's in their heads that you can't impact the environment to help people. And that's the wrong way of thinking. We impact the environment to exactly help people. If you think about the map that I showed you, you're impacting the environment in Dominican Republic to save the environment. We have the cleanest air and water in the U.S. that we've ever had in our history because of the energy that we use. And helping students around the world understand that I think is a worthy cause. You can go to switchon.org, sign up, give, watch his videos, great organization. 4th thing I'm doing is being an accelerator for the Center for Industrial Progress. Jason mentioned Alex Epstein. A lot of you have heard Alex talk. You've read his book, Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. He's also now providing tweet-linked content to federally elected officials and their staffs, hosting an Energy Talking Points on Demand group every other Monday. You can reach out to Alex at alexepstein.com. You can become an accelerator on his website, centerforindustrialprogress.com. As Jason mentioned, following the Alliance on their social media, following Alex on social media, following CO2 Coalition, Heartland Institute, following people that are pro-industry on your social media accounts are a big deal. I've seen the work that Alex is doing with elected officials, and it's changing their minds, because as they're coming to me for money and asking for a donation, like y'all all get hit up, I make sure I slide them energytalkingpoints.com. So as long as your staff is using these to tweet out, every time AOC or anybody else tweets out something about how bad energy is or how Biden wants to increase wind and solar, here, read energytalkingpoints.com and you can tweet about this. And finally, what I'll leave you with is number 5 is exactly what you're doing today, is coming to your industry conferences and supporting your association, supporting the work that Jason does and other industry associations that are in the room, getting involved with them, meeting your state and federal legislatures. I did not know mine. Still don't know them off the top of my head. I have to look them up with my government affairs people. But when they come in, they hear about pro-fossil fuel stuff, not just because it benefits our industry, because it benefits all of their constituents. And I think a lot of them got their eyes opened up in Texas in February when a lot of constituents lost energy. They all of a sudden were interested in what Alex Epstein had to say, what Jason Isaac had to say, and what others had to say about energy. And because we haven't built a natural gas power plant in the state of Texas in 10 years, we didn't have enough energy in February. And today we don't have enough energy because that power plant still isn't getting built today. So we're in a crisis in Texas and don't even know it because of the government subsidies that have gone to another industry and not helping our industry. Finally, and you'll see today Chris Wright speaking. His ESG report's one of the best ESG reports written, in my opinion. We don't have to write an ESG report. We're a privately held company, but our website has a lot of ESG information in it. Focusing your ESG, those of you that might be getting money from outside investors, it's very helpful to know that you're doing the best in your environmental area, that you're good stewards of your cash and money from an ESG standpoint. Adjusting websites to put more information like this out on the websites, adjusting any speeches that you might be given to get in there about how great, not just the jobs and taxes and things that we provide, which I think is the best. But we have a lot less people working in this industry today than we did 10 years ago. So with the number of rigs we're running today, with the amount of energy that we're producing, we're getting better and better and better. Our impact on the environment's getting less and less and less. And people are using our products in more places in the world. And I think that trend continues. So Again, strong history, bright future. I love this industry. I think we're doing a fantastic job, not just for what you're doing for your families and yourself and your communities, but what you're doing for the world. So thanks for having me here today, and have a great conference.